Hello and welcome to our SPS Global Insights Annual Review. Throughout the year, we have kept you informed of critical incidents around the world relating to kidnap, ransom, extortion and piracy. There has been much upheaval and unrest globally over the past 12 months, so we want to take this opportunity now to reflect on what's been happening and give you the latest updates according to our intel. We take a look at Mexico first, and Mexico's already tenuous security environment spiraled in 2022. Areas which were not known for violence began to see a spike in incidents. Baja California, a popular tourist destination, saw its violent crime rate triple in 2022. Cities that regularly host foreign nationals, including Los Cabos, Rosarito, Tijuana, Tulum and Ciudad Juarez, all experienced an increase in violence, which includes gunfights between gangs during the day, irrespective of any bystanders. Attacks against innocent civilians and tourists have become commonplace in many areas. At the same time, kidnappings for ransom, express kidnappings and extortions, which have always been an issue, continue to climb in the lawless environment. In 2022, a number of Western governments issued warning to their citizens to exercise increased caution or reconsider travel entirely to popular tourist states such as Quintana Roo and Baja California due to the increased threat of crime and kidnapping. The Mexican military continues to patrol the streets alongside the National Guard, which recently came under military control. Both have been accused of undertaking extrajudicial violence and committing human rights abuses while trying to stem the violence. From Mexico, we move further south now, and during 2022, violence including homicides between Central America's two main criminal gangs, Mara Salvatrucha 13 or MS-13 and Barrio 18, continued to devastate El Salvador, Guatemala and Honduras, known as the Northern Triangle. A breakdown of a secret truce between the two gangs resulted in a wave of violence in El Salvador in late March, during which 87 people were killed over a 3-day period. That subsequent government crackdown has reportedly helped to slightly reduce the homicide and crime rates in recent months. In August, the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project reported that Guatemala had experienced a 100% increase in violent crime, which is being attributed to gang activity. Despite various crackdowns by government forces against gang activity, these three countries are in the midst of what has been called an extortion crisis. The extortion industry in the Northern Triangle, led by gang leaders within the prisons, is now estimated to be worth at least $1.1 billion annually. Such revenue, coupled with economic rampant corruption in El Salvador, Guatemala and Honduras, all but ensures that extortions against locals, foreign nationals and businesses will continue unabated into 2023, and the threat of kidnapping is therefore elevated. Taking a look at Haiti now, and in 2022, reports of kidnap incidents increased at an alarming rate. Haiti is now considered to be in the top 3 countries in the world in terms of reported kidnap incidents. Violent gangs undertook kidnappings and other forms of violence with relative impunity, particularly in the capital, Port-au-Prince. In early summer, the kidnappings of medical doctors prompted several hospitals to close in protest of the rampant violence. In response, the United Nations Security Council extended the mandate of United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti until July 2023. This extension also expanded the number of security officials in Haiti, which were desperately needed to help begin combating the rampant violence. This additional international security assistance will help to begin addressing Haiti's security issues in 2023. However, any improvements in Haiti can be expected to be slow and incremental. As we move further south and into South America and to Colombia first. In Colombia, former guerrilla leader Gustavo Petro took office in August. Petro ran on a platform which included guaranteeing work and wage to unemployed citizens, significant subsidies to single mothers, vast expansion of social programs, striking peace agreements with Colombia's illegal armed groups, removing corporate tax benefits, increasing import tariffs, and of course raising taxes on Colombia's wealthiest citizens. In early November, Colombia's Congress approved Petro's tax reform bill that will raise an additional $4 billion annually. Colombia will now levy additional duties on coal and crude oil, raising concerns that these reforms will dampen foreign investment, weaken the peso, and further damage Colombia's stumbling petroleum-dependent economy. Petro is also dealing with a Colombia that is facing a spiralling security environment, particularly in the Colombian countryside amongst armed groups. Cocoa production is at record highs. Extortion is rampant, and thanks to violence between various armed groups, Colombia has a higher homicide rate per capita than Mexico at 26.8 per 100,000. Kidnappings, though nowhere near the levels previously seen in Colombia, still occur in Colombia's rural areas. Express kidnappings, though not rampant, have been an increasing problem in the cities, most notably Medellin. Petro will face many challenges in 2023, from his promises to increase the welfare state that run counter to his goal of cutting petroleum exploration and production, to his attempts to strike peace agreements with the armed groups while they are simultaneously strengthening their hold on Colombian rural areas. Meanwhile, in Brazil in October, Brazil elected Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, known as Lula, as president. Lula, who has previously held the office of president in Brazil, left office in 2010 as the most popular president in Brazilian history. He presided over an economic boom that lifted nearly 30 million Brazilians from poverty. Lula also presided over an improved security environment. However, now Lula will take office to a post-pandemic Brazil, which is facing increasing inflation, high unemployment, high public sector debt, a fragile fiscal situation, and spiralling security issues. Amidst Lula's public commitment to prioritising social spending over fiscal integrity, analysts have expressed concern that Lula will lack the fiscal discipline that Brazil needs to bolster its economic health. The most common form of kidnappings in Brazil are express kidnappings, which have increased dramatically throughout the year, particularly in larger cities. Lula officially takes office on the 1st of January 2023. It remains to be seen whether he can once again preside over a booming Brazil. Now we focus our attention on Africa, and SPS sources in Africa have expressed concern regarding sub-Saharan Africa's post-COVID economic struggles and its expected effect on safety and security throughout the region. Our sources are reporting that kidnappings, particularly express kidnappings, are increasing almost uniformly across the region, including Kenya, Tanzania, and Zambia, as a result of the poverty exacerbated by the pandemic lockdowns. Kidnapping for ransom in South Africa has increased in every quarter of 2022. Over the course of one 3-month period, South Africa experienced a 59% increase in reported kidnappings, with the Gauteng province reporting an extraordinary 136% increase. SPS sources in South Africa report that a number of kidnappings appear to be professionally organised, being carried out in the middle of the day with no fear of confrontation with the police or reprisal of any kind. These are also being carried out with multiple armoured cars in affluent neighbourhoods, with clear evidence of prior surveillance. This level of professionalism has caused concern amongst locals that these gangs may be branching out beyond just kidnapping for ransom and into human trafficking. SPS sources express little expectation that anything will change in 2023. In fact, all signs on the ground in South Africa indicate the issue of kidnapping is only likely to worsen in the next year. Meanwhile, in Mozambique, in the 5 years since violence started in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province, over 1 million people have fled the province and over 4,000 have been killed. In 2022, the violence began to spread to neighbouring Nampula province, which experienced numerous attacks during which houses were burned, residents assaulted, and a number of fatalities were recorded. Cabo Delgado is home to Africa's third largest liquefied natural gas reserves. Russia's war in Ukraine has driven up gas prices and stoked fears of gas shortages this winter, making Mozambique's reserves even more vital. Total Energies, which suspended operations after attacks on their sites and employees, refuses to restart operations until the security situation in Cabo Delgado improves. Meanwhile, kidnappings for ransom continue in southern Mozambique, notably in the capital of Maputo. Business people, foreign nationals and locals continued to be favoured targets. It's believed that kidnapping rings that began and continue in Maputo moved south and are also responsible for many of the kidnappings that are plaguing South Africa. In the Democratic Republic of Congo this year, violence between Congolese Tutsi rebel group M23 and the Congolese military flared to nearly unprecedented levels in the DRC's resource-rich eastern provinces of Ituri, North Kivu and South Kivu, which border Rwanda, Uganda and Burundi. As the violence and number of clashes have increased, M23 has been successful in capturing significant and strategic portions of the region during the second half of 2022. According to the UN, over 188,000 residents have been displaced since the 20th of October due to the violence. The situation has become so untenable that Kenya, Uganda, South Sudan and Burundi have all agreed to send troops to the DRC. Known as the East Africa Regional Force, their mandate is to specifically target and engage armed groups in the eastern regions. Meanwhile, the seven-nation East African Community, or the EAC, is holding peace talks in Kenya between the Congolese government and armed factions in an attempt to broker some sort of peace agreement. All of these measures are being undertaken because there is increasing concern that the violence may devolve into a war, which would threaten the fragile security environment of Central Africa. What happens over the next couple of months will be crucial in deciding what will ultimately happen in the eastern DRC and possibly the entire region. Looking at Nigeria now, and during 2022, the Nigerian Senate passed a bill which made the payment of ransoms illegal in the country. More specifically, the bill mandates up to 15 years imprisonment for payment of a ransom, the death penalty for convicted kidnappers where the abduction leads to loss of life, and life imprisonment for convicted kidnappers where the victim survives. This happened while kidnappings continue to ravage the country. According to a Nigeria-based geopolitical intel source, between July 2021 and June 2022, a total of approximately $14.8 million in ransoms were demanded, while approximately $1.5 million were paid as ransom. According to a Nigeria-based intel source, from the 1st of January to the 30th of September 2022, they logged 3,990 incidents that resulted in 8,994 deaths and 4,641 abductions. In 2023, the international community will be watching closely to see if the new bill is enacted and enforced. As we move into the Middle East and North Africa, Iraqi kidnappings, unlawful detentions and enforced disappearances continued in 2022. Iraq has one of the highest number of missing peoples in the world, estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands. In early November 2022, an American aid worker was killed during an attempted kidnapping in Baghdad, highlighting the continued threat to foreign nationals living and working in Baghdad. Some Iraqi kidnapping rings are sophisticated and for the sole purpose of collecting ransoms. However, other kidnappings and disappearances have been tied to government officials, security forces, and intelligence services. Victims typically include civil society and human rights activists, journalists, and members of religious minorities. Unfortunately, Iraq continues to struggle with the problem of underreporting and lack of transparency from government officials. International observers continued to be forced to use anecdotal evidence to try and ascertain the breadth of the issue. UN experts visited Iraq in November to address the issue with the Iraqi government. Meanwhile, in Syria and Turkey last month, a number of Syrians were arrested for carrying out a bombing on Istanbul's Istiklal Avenue, an area popular with tourists that killed 6 people and injured more than 80. The bombing comes as Syria itself experienced increasing violence within its own borders in 2022. It is reported from the beginning of 2022 to early November, Syria has experienced 9,801 incidents of violence, which include explosions, riots, battles, protests and violence against civilians. These incidents led to the deaths of 4,633 civilians. The threat of kidnapping remains high throughout the country. International observers are concerned that the apparent Syrian ties to the bombing in Istanbul will prompt retaliation by Turkey, straining the already tense relationship between the two countries. Experts are also concerned that this is the beginning of more attacks which may occur ahead of Turkey's presidential elections set for June 2023. Now, as we focus our attention on Europe, and in February 2022, Russia shocked the world when it invaded Ukraine, causing massive turmoil throughout the region, the effects of which are extensive, varied, and still being discovered. Sharing a large border with Ukraine has placed Poland on the front lines of the war, most recently evident when an air defence mishap in November, which entailed a Ukrainian air defence missile accidentally landing in Poland. NATO is likely to strengthen its eastern positions, which has caused concern that it may ultimately only serve to raise tensions with Russia, who will most likely view any NATO escalation as provocation. Another pressing concern is Poland's economic health. Poland has had 7.6 million Ukrainians come across the border since the invasion in February. Most have moved on to other countries or returned home, but 1.5 million have stayed and registered as refugees. This helped facilitate Poland's economy deterioration in 2022, with an inflation rate still around 18%. Poland's GDP is likely to continue to fall in 2023, which could lead to an increase in crime. Poland's role as Ukraine's frontline partner, humanitarian supplier, and logistical hub, coupled with the onslaught of refugees, the energy crisis, inflation rate, and burgeoning government debt, suggests 2023 is going to be a very difficult year for Poland on multiple fronts. Looking at Asia, and specifically China now, and 2022 saw the Chinese government further consolidate power both in and outside the borders of China, as well as in the cyber world. On the national stage, after a damning report from human rights NGO Safeguard Defenders, China was forced to admit that it had established overseas police stations in countries around the world. The purpose of these stations is to extrajudicially pursue Chinese citizens overseas, a serious violation of each country's sovereignty. In response to the bombshell news, 14 countries, including Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States, announced the launch of investigations into the stations. Internally, as of this report, the Chinese government continues to enact strict COVID-related lockdowns, which has not only led to protests and extreme discontent nationwide, but also stifled China's economy. Anecdotal evidence also suggests that enforced disappearances of Chinese citizens by the Chinese government continue. In fact, citizens coerced to return to China via the overseas police stations are reportedly facing detention and occasionally disappearing upon their return. In the cyber world in 2022, Chinese companies were required to provide their proprietary algorithms to the Cyberspace Administration of China, one of the country's most powerful regulators and a de facto arm of the Chinese government. China has been exerting more control over online content and communities, calling on algorithms to be fair and transparent, yet demanding that all companies and algorithms adhere to China's Communist Party ideology. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 2022 was a year of political turmoil. In April, Prime Minister Imran Khan was removed from office after a no-confidence vote. Since being ousted, Khan and his supporters have held numerous protests throughout Pakistan. On the 3rd of November, Khan survived an assassination attempt which killed one of his supporters and injured over a dozen more. Subsequently, a senior Pakistan judge, citing intelligence reports, found that there was evidence that another assassination attempt would occur if Khan rejoined the protests. The threat of kidnap across the whole of Pakistan remains heightened towards foreign travellers. Moving on to the world of cybersecurity, which often took centre stage in 2022, and cyber criminals launched attacks on numerous high-profile government targets, including the Portuguese Department of Defence, during which confidential NATO documents were exfiltrated, Italy's tax agency, Peru's National Intelligence Agency, and the Costa Rican government, which resulted in the Costa Rican government declaring a state of national emergency. These attacks, and those undertaken during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, prompted ransomware to be declared a state-level weapon, as it is now commonly used as a weapon of war. Simultaneously, in 2022, cyber criminals increasingly targeted small to medium-sized businesses, with 43% of cyber attacks being against small businesses. Globally, businesses fell victim to cyber attacks every 11 seconds. There is no indication that the rate of cyber attacks will slow anytime in the future. The cost of ransomware damages is estimated to balloon to $42 billion by 2024, and the cost of cybersecurity for corporations is forecast to grow to $376 billion by 2029. And as we turn our attention to piracy, in a rare piece of good news, piracy and armed maritime robbery incidents worldwide fell to their lowest levels since 1994. The Gulf of Aden, off the coast of Somalia, has not experienced a piracy attack against a merchant ship since 2018. In response, the International Maritime Bureau, or the IMB, announced that the designation of Indian Ocean High Risk Area, or HRA, has been removed from the region. The only region with any notable increase in piracy events are the Straits of Malacca and Singapore. Even there, the incidents are typically simple robberies in which no one is injured and the pirates depart upon being discovered. SPS sources based in Africa note that attacks against private yachts and ships still occur. Additionally, our sources express concern that the removal of UN forces in the Gulf of Aden will allow piracy to erupt once again in the new year. And that brings to a close our SPS Global Insights Annual Review. We look forward to engaging with you and bringing you the latest information as we have it from around the world in 2023. Goodbye for now.